Right now, you check your phone and see a number. 47 likes, 12,000 steps, $284.16 in your account, 3 unread messages. You don't even register it as counting anymore. It just happens automatically dozens of times a day. So here's a question nobody thinks to ask. When did humans start counting? Not with calculators, not with computers, not even with written numbers. We're talking about the very first time a human being looked at more than one of something and understood, somehow, that 2 was different from 3. That moment changed everything about how our species thinks. But first, you'd assume counting started with trade. Buying, selling, keeping track of debts. That feels obvious? It's also wrong, and the real reason is stranger than that. For a long time, anthropologists assumed number sense was a byproduct of civilization, something that showed up once humans started farming, building cities, owing each other things. But that assumption fell apart the moment archaeologists started looking at bones. In 1960, geologist Jean de Hanselin was digging near a river in what is now the Democratic Republic of Congo when his team found a small, dark, fossilized bone. It had rows of notches carved into it in deliberate groups, not random scratches. Groups. It's called the Ishango Bone, and it's roughly 20,000 years old. The notches are arranged in sets, some rows adding up to 60, others clustered in patterns that some researchers argue represent prime numbers, or possibly a lunar calendar tracking the phases of the moon. Someone, 20,000 years ago, sat down with a sharp stone and a bone, and turned counting into something you could hold in your hand. And it gets older. In a cave in Swaziland called Border Cave, archaeologists found something called the Lebombo Bone, a baboon fibula carved with 29 distinct notches. It's been dated to roughly 44,000 years old, which makes it one of the oldest mathematical artifacts ever discovered. 29 notches. That's suspiciously close to the number of days in a lunar cycle, which means someone tens of thousands of years before agriculture, before writing, before anything we'd call civilization, was tracking time by carving a tally into bone every single day. So counting wasn't invented for money. It was invented for the moon. Here's why that matters. Before counting existed, a human brain could recognize quantity, but only up to a point. Neuroscientists call this subitizing, the ability to glance at a small group of objects and instantly know how many there are without counting them one by one. Most humans and most animals can subitize up to about 4. Beyond that, the brain blurs. Studies on infants show that a 6-month-old baby can tell the difference between 2 dots and 3 dots almost instantly. But the moment you get to 5 or 6, the recognition disappears. That's not a flaw. That's the default setting every mammal is born with. So somewhere in our evolutionary past, something pushed the human brain past that 4-item ceiling, and that something appears to have been the sky. Think about what it actually takes to track a lunar cycle. The moon doesn't repeat every day. It repeats every 29 or 30 days. To notice that pattern at all, you need to hold a number in your head far longer than any animal ever needs to. You need to remember yesterday's count, add today to it, and carry that forward for almost a month. That is an enormous cognitive leap, and it required a tool, because no human brain reliably holds a number that large without external help. The bone wasn't decoration, it was memory. It was the first hard drive our species ever built. And once that leap happened, it didn't stop at the moon. Cognitive archaeologist Karen Lee Overman has spent years studying how physical objects, tally marks, pebbles, knots in rope, actually restructured the human brain itself. Her research argues that counting tools didn't just record numbers we already understood. They created the concept of number in the first place. Before external tally systems, 3 wasn't a clean, abstract idea. It was just a few blurred together with 4 and 5. The physical act of carving one notch, then another, forced the brain to separate quantities it previously couldn't tell apart. In other words, we didn't invent counting because we got smarter. We got smarter because we invented counting. This is where it gets strange, because counting also changed how humans dealt with each other. Anthropologists have found early tally systems used not just for the moon, but for livestock, days since a hunt, and debts between people. A 2013 study on numeral systems across small-scale societies found that the earliest recorded quantities almost always tracked one of three things: time, animals, or obligations. Who owes who gave what, who's still waiting to be repaid. Counting wasn't just math, it was memory for fairness. Before counting, if someone owed you 3 goats and paid back 2, you had to just trust your own fuzzy sense of, that doesn't feel like enough. Once you had a tally, you had proof. Counting turned vague social feelings into something you could point at and argue about, which means counting may be one of the oldest tools humans ever built for keeping each other honest. And then there's the part that connects directly back to you. In 2004, researchers studying an isolated tribe in the Amazon called the Pirahã discovered something that stunned linguists. The Pirahã language has no words for exact numbers. Not 1, not 2, not 10. Just rough categories for a few and many. When researchers tested Pirahã adults on simple matching tasks, lining up dots to match a small quantity, they performed fine with small amounts and then fell apart the moment the number got past 4 or 5. The exact same ceiling every infant on Earth is born with, which means the Pirahã aren't bad at math. They simply never built the external tools, the words, the tallies, the notches, that let the rest of us break past our biological default. Without a system to count on, the human brain stays capped at roughly the same number a chimpanzee can track. So, here's where that leaves you. Every time you glance at your phone and instantly know you have 3 new notifications without consciously counting them, that's subitizing, the same reflex a baby has. But the moment you check your bank balance, calculate a tip, or track your calories down to the exact number, you're doing something no human brain can do on its own. You're running software that was built 44,000 years ago on a bone in a cave in Swaziland. You didn't invent that ability. You inherited it from someone tracking the moon so they'd know when it was safe to hunt, when the tides would shift, when the season would turn. We think of numbers as the most modern, most artificial thing in our lives. Spreadsheets, GPS coordinates, stock tickers, step counts. But the impulse underneath all of it is ancient. Someone sitting in the dark, watching the sky change night after night, needing a way to hold on to something their own memory couldn't carry alone. They picked up a sharp stone, they carved a line, then another, then another. And 44,000 years later, you're still doing the exact same thing, just with a screen instead of a bone, still trying to keep count of a world too big to hold in your head all at once.